Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to the post-cabinet brief for today's Thursday, March 24th, 2016.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and happy Pagua. We're still in the Pagua season, and a happy Easter to everyone, and particularly members of our Christian community. This morning, I am slated to do the post-cabinet briefing. I start by saying that at cabinet meeting on Tuesday, cabinet, of course, with limited information available, did note the recent attacks, terrorist attacks in Brussels, Belgium, and of course, government extends its sympathy to the persons, the relatives of those who died, and its support unflinchingly to the government and people of Belgium and Europe, because I believe that no one and no place is now immune from terrorist activity. So we stand in solidarity with those persons. We also considered many matters, but this morning I will address 10 of those matters. The first is an ongoing brief, an update on El Nino weather conditions, the weekly crime report that is given by the Minister of Public Security. We approved some overseas training, law enforcement and prison officers, and we approved as well for Minister of Finance to attend several important meetings, which I'll discuss. We also agreed to approve Guyana's attendance to first regional seminar of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, on illegal deforestation, and non-resident ambassadors to Guyana, that is, were approved, and we gave our approval to the purchase of supplies for standard and technical services for the Ministry of Public Health. So I'll go straight into the first matter. The Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Noel Holder, briefed Cabinet about the ongoing El Nino weather conditions and the measures that were being implemented to provide relief to citizens across Guyana. The Honorable Minister also submitted a proposed budget for short, medium and long-term relief efforts, and he reported that the situation was better than it was 2 weeks ago, with of course the exception of the Rupununi region. The Minister explained that an analysis of the situation had led to the conclusion that there will be a deficit in rainfall quantities and an increase in atmospheric temperatures in the coming months. These conditions will place Guyana on the drought warning at least up to May of 2016. The quantity of fresh water available for various uses across sectors is therefore likely to be reduced, and the chances of forest-related fires will, of course, increase. The Government of Guyana, through the Ministry of Agriculture, has planned a number of interventions to address the effects of these continuing adverse weather conditions, and these include, firstly, works to be done in regions by the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority. We are also ensuring that potable water is provided to Pomeroon River residents, because there is a noticeable intrusion of salt water into the Pomeroon River, some say as high up as 60 miles into the river. In Region 3, 10,000 rods of irrigation canal will be cleared, damaged structures repaired, and water will be pumped into irrigation canals from the Conservancy. In Region 4, efforts are ongoing to assess the extent and cost of relief efforts to farmers and residents, especially cash crop farmers and rice farmers who will need water for the cultivation of the next crop. It should be noted that there is harvesting of rice now, so the demand for water is not as high as it was some months ago, but of course there is an upcoming planting of paddy seed. The MMA ADA has catered for the most critical needs in Region 5, with the primary concern being to provide water to Blairmont Estate for the rest of the first crop of 2016. Potable water is also being supplied to 2 areas in Region 6 by the GWI. These are East Bank Burbis, Sisters Village to Mara, and the New Forest area in East Kanji. These areas depend on river water, which has now become salted, and the water is supplied in these areas from 2 times per week by GWI, and this is expected to increase to 4 times per week should the situation get any worse. In terms of irrigation waters, the situation is below critical since all irrigation pumps are working. Of the 54,000 acres of rice under cultivation in this region, 5,000. Sorry, I was making the point of the 54,000 acres of rice under present cultivation in this region. 5,000 acres are expected to incur losses. The affected areas include number 19 village, East Bank, Berbice, and Crabwood Creek. In Region 7, the emphasis will be on cleaning creeks and drilling 8 shallow wells. 3 wells will be drilled at Batavia, 2 wells at Dark Point, and 3 wells at Carrow Village. A well is also going to be drilled at Cartabo with funds to be provided from the Basic Needs Trust Fund. Creeks will also be cleared at Dark Point and at Carrow, and a budget for relief efforts in Region 8 has been proposed. However, discussions are ongoing about the technical requirements needed to implement the measures proposed. In Region 9, priority for water has been identified in 5 villages: Anai, Shulinab, Awarenau, Tashuda, and Kumu villages. Other areas classified as critical and in need of immediate intervention are Ruperti, Toka, Arnaputa, which are in North Rupununi, Potaranau, Sand Creek, which are South Central Rupununi, and Marawanau, Aishalton, and Karadaru, which are Deep South Rupununi. Paipang, Tiger Pond, Mr. Archer made it difficult for me this morning. Romoparu, Karakarana, which are in the South Park Rhinos. I should say that last weekend I was in Deep South Rupununi, and there is evidence that rains have started there, so hopefully the conditions will improve. The water situation in Region 10 has not been affected by the prevailing El Nino weather conditions, and Cabinet agreed to consider all these measures in the proposal for special emergency funding for the 2016 El Nino intervention. Second matter, the report from the Public Security Minister, the Vice President, Mr. Ramjatan. The Honourable Minister of Public Security briefed Cabinet about the crime situation, and he covered the period, the week March 12 to 18, 2016. There were 48 serious crimes, which included 1 robbery murder, 20 break and enter incidents, 5 reported cases of rape, 1 case of robbery with aggravation. There were also 25 reported traffic accidents, 3 of which were serious, 9 minor, and 13 resulting in damages. None at that time in that period were fatal, and most were due to speeding and the cell phone use whilst driving. There were 2 reported cases, unfortunately, of suicide in the same period as well. A total of 145 kilograms of cannabis sativa were destroyed by the Ghana Police Force Narcotics Branch at the Aracabra on the Linen-Suzdike Highway. No persons were charged because I believe when they got there, the farm was abandoned. Cabinet also approved overseas training for law enforcement and prison officers as follows. Firstly, in the participation by the Ghana Police Force in a conference titled Women in Law Enforcement Leadership Training Program, being held in San Salvador, El Salvador, from April 4th to 8th, 2016, and the persons attending: Ms. Maxine Graham, Senior Superintendent of Police; Ms. Joel Hales, Assistant Superintendent of Police; Ms. Alethea Scipio, Assistant Superintendent of Police; and Ms. Kavita Bawani, Research Officer, Ministry of Public Security. The course objectives include understanding gender issues in the law enforcement workplace and women's issues as they relate to law enforcement leadership. Participation by the Ghana Prison Service in the Emergency and Response Team, ERT, trained the trainer course at the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Facilities, Maryland, USA. We'll also be filling a delegation there. Mr. Kelvin Hudson, Assistant Superintendent of Prisons; Mr. Holligan, Cadet Officer; Mr. Hemmerding, Cadet Officer; Mr. Crawford, Chief Prison Officer; Mr. Cox, Principal Prison Officer 2, Mr. Mentor, Prison Trade Instructor, Mr. Grandison, Principal Prison Officer 1, Mr. Prass, Prison Officer, Mr. Prescott, Prison Officer, and Ms. Murray, Woman Prison Officer, all of whom will attend. The objective of this course is to teach the basics of emergency response, the judicious use of force, and the observation of international human rights standards, as well as the tactics and techniques to be employed by prison emergency response teams when dealing with emergencies. This course is designed to enable participants to train others after graduation. And these courses were made available by invitations, thankfully, from the Embassy of the United States of America to the government of Guyana. Fourth matter for discussion is the activities of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Jordan. Cabinet has approved the attendance of the Minister at spring meetings of the IMF and World Bank, which are going to be held from the 15th to the 17th of April 2016 in Washington, D.C. Key elements of the meeting will be discussions in the IMF's International Monetary and Financial Committee and the Joint World Bank IMF Development Committee. The opportunity will also be taken to hold bilateral meetings with the officials of the IMF, World Bank, and IADB, as well as other delegates and the private sector organizations and civil society groups of interest to Guyana. I think I can pause here to say that we were notified at Cabinet as well that Guyana has been approved for membership in the Islamic Development Bank, and steps are going to be taken by Minister of Finance to formalize that membership. So he'll be reporting to you in due course. On his trip to Washington for the important meetings, the Minister will be accompanied by Dr. Gobind Ganga, Governor of the Bank of Guyana and alternate Governor of the IMF. Following the spring meetings, the Minister will attend the 4th Annual Ministerial Forum for Finance Ministers at Harvard University from April 17th to 20th, 2016. And I should add that this prestigious invitation is extended to only 10 serving finance ministers in the world from Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And the theme of this year's gathering will be demonstrated leadership and commitment to building national well-being through economic development and social advancement. So our minister has been invited to join 9 other finance ministers to engage in this very important colloquium in Boston at Harvard University. This forum aims at enhancing ministerial and political leadership to achieve better value for government investment. The Minister of Finance will also attend the 57th meeting of the Board of Governors of the Inter-American Development Bank and the 31st Inter-American Investment Corporation, IIC, to be held in Nassau, Bahamas from April 7th to 10th. So before going to Washington, he will be in the Bahamas. The Minister again will be accompanied by the Governor of our central bank, and at that meeting, a statement on behalf of the Caribbean constituency of the bank will be made by Guyana. Guyana will also be pressing for visible engagement with the Inter-American Investment Corporation, the private sector arm of the IDB. The IIC provides project financing in the form of direct loans, equity investment, and lines of credit to the private sector, but has not been active in Guyana in past years. The Minister will be accompanied at those meetings by Ms. Shirani Isaacs, who is head of the Multilateral Financial Institutions Division of the Ministry of Finance. Moving on to Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture, the Honorable Mr. Noel Holder, will lead a team to attend a meeting of the Inter-American Institute of Cooperation on Agriculture, ICA, at the invitation of its Director General. The meeting will be conducted in Costa Rica and will be to discuss ICA's country strategy 2014 to 2018 based on agricultural priorities and needs identified by Guyana, and will be held at its headquarters from April 11th to 15th. I should add that currently Guyana takes the lead in agriculture in CARICOM, and so Cabinet felt that it was important for our minister to attend with a team. The discussions will seek to identify cooperation at all levels of work and the implementation of all actions and contributions by the ICA and Guyana. And these will be grouped under the following thematic areas. Firstly, agricultural innovation. Secondly, efficient use of water resources. Thirdly, family agriculture. Fourthly, women and youth in agriculture. And fifthly, marketing of agricultural produce in Latin America and the Caribbean. At those meetings, Minister's delegation will include Mr. Richard Cumberbatch, who is CEO of the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, and Ms. Ida Seeley Adams, General Manager, New Guyana Marketing Corporation. Moving back into the finance sector, Cabinet has approved Guyana's attendance at a high level in the American Development Bank IDB Public-Private Dialogue on Trade Facilitation to be held from March 30th to 31st in Buenos Aires, Argentina. This dialogue is intended to facilitate open public-private engagement and to seek to improve trade facilitation through Latin America and the Caribbean. It will explore how best small economies can integrate their development objectives and move from dialogue to implementation of actions connected with importation, exportation, and to facilitate trade. Ms. Jaggernaut from the Ministry of Business, its permanent secretary, will represent the government of Guyana at that important meeting. Eighth matter for discussion, approval has been granted for Guyana's participation in the first regional seminar on illegal deforestation. This seminar will be hosted by the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, member countries under the project monitoring forest cover in the Amazon region will be held in Brasilia, Brazil from April 13 to 15. In collaboration with ACTO in this effort will be the Brazilian Ministry of Environment, its Institute of Environment, and its Forestry Service. The project aims to develop and implement joint forest cover monitoring in the Amazon region, and our delegation will include Ms. Jocelyn Dow, who is chair of the Guyana Forestry Commission, Ms. Tawana Smart, manager of the GIS Remote Sensor Guyana Forestry Commission, Mr. Gavin Agar, technical officer, Ministry of Natural Resources. Cabinet has approved the appointment of non-resident ambassadors to Guyana as follows. His Excellency Khalid Khalifa Abdullah Rashid Al Mula, non-resident ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Ambassador Al Mula is the first ambassador of the UAE to be accredited to Guyana. He is resident in Brasilia, Brazil, and will service Guyana. Diplomatic relations between Guyana and the UAE were established in February of 1995, and it is expected that this accreditation will be the beginning of the strengthening of relationships between our two countries. Secondly, we also gave our no objection to the accreditation of His Excellency Aladdin Waji Rushdi, non-resident ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt to the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Ambassador Rushdi is resident as well in Brasilia, Brazil. Again, Guyana and Egypt established diplomatic relations in September of 1971 and have always had good and cordial relations. Egypt established a mission in Georgetown in 1975 but closed it in 1981 due to financial difficulties. The tour of duty of Egypt's previous ambassador to Guyana came to an end in 2012. And lastly, I turn to contracts for medical supplies. Cabinet has approved through single sourcing supplies of standard and technical services for the Ministry of Public Health as follows. BioHit Peptide tips and devices. The supply is going to be Caribbean Medical Supplies Incorporated. The cost, $34,400,000. Secondly, Nova Express test strips. Again, the supplier, Caribbean Medical Supplies Incorporated. Cost, $16,200,000. Third, Beckman Coulter reagents, Caribbean Medical Supplies Incorporated. Cost, $23,277,195. Reagents again, Caribbean Medical Supplies. cost $23,227,195 again. Becton Dickinson syringes, needles, and tubes, Caribbean Medical Supplies, $39,532,143. And Eagle Reagent Supplier, Eureka Medical Laboratories, $40,552,000. That concludes the brief from Cabinet.
Minister, good morning. Dennis Shibral, General. Sir, with respect to the drought situation, can you say to what extent government will be considering providing direct financial assistance or facilitating negotiations with commercial banks for rice farmers who have lost significant acreages of rice due to the drought? Are you taking questions outside now or after?
Perhaps we take some on the brief and then.
Okay, very well.
In terms of the rice crop, I think the report we received is that the losses, though they are not as severe as expected or anticipated. And it is, I believe, too soon to describe them, therefore, significant. And without more, it's also difficult for government to assess the manner in which it's going to intervene, whether by trying to provide financial support or encourage banks to do so. I think it's too soon. We would expect that the industry and the Rice Development Board would advise government accordingly. But there are losses, but not as severe as previously expected.
Adam Harris, Prime News. Sir, with the anticipated loss in rice rice production and with the much touted buildup of rice on the markets, exactly what is the situation with Guyana accessing markets to sell the rice it has in hand and the rice that's coming on stream?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is an ongoing endeavor that will have to include both government and the private sector. In years past, the sale of rice was purely a government venture. Now it is joint. We have been very active in pursuing new markets in Europe, in Mexico, in Latin America and elsewhere, and I believe time will yield good results. I know, for example, that Venezuela is buying from Suriname, and there are suggestions that some of our rice is traveling to Venezuela via Suriname. Certainly there seems to be an uptake in rice farming in the quarantine. So there's something happening there. So the prospects look good. And I don't think that we'll get the preferential market that we got from Venezuela, because they had indicated before we took government that they'd be discontinuing it. But certainly I think the prospects for our sale of rice are good. I'm told that there's likely to be a shipment to Africa sometime soon of several 100,000 tons. So things are picking up.
A clarification, Minister, if you would, Mr. Archer. With respect to the rice leaving Guyana to go to Suriname, is it?
That is just anecdotal. I'm just saying there are suggestions that some of our rice is going over.
Legally?
I'm not sure.
Sure.
Jarvine, K3 News. There have been concerns raised about the recent rice deal with Jamaica that there was little to no consultations. Did Holder brief you on this?
You mean Minister Holder?
Minister Holder, yes.
This is the Honorable Minister, not Holder. Cabinet should have to get involved in every single bag of rice sent somewhere, or that's not the business of Cabinet. And so the Minister, I believe, has the confidence of government to do what is in the best interest. And my sense is that whatever government, any government does, this government, whatever we do will come under some severe and extensive scrutiny and perhaps some criticism. To what extent, if you're going to send rice to Jamaica, do you have consultations? And with whom? I'm not aware that before gold is shipped from the Guyana Gold Board that we enter into consultations. And so too, rice is a commodity. Timber, logs are a commodity, and I don't see personally why consultations have to be held when commodities are being shipped. I do agree, however, that the best possible price for Guyana should be obtained. I believe that the Ministry of Agriculture is under pressure to deliver new markets, and when under pressure, sometimes you forsake expediency, says that you sacrifice perhaps a better price 2 months down the road for the price that is being offered now, so that some relief could be brought. So it could be a case, and I think that the minister will probably attest to this, that he got what was, in his view, the best price at the best at that time, which was the best he could have done.
Marcel Thomas, Double News. Minister, on the contracts, you said the drugs were single source. Any particular reason for this?
Well, single sourcing is done when there's the possibility that the process of going out to tender the time would cause delay in delivery. And of course, the downside of that would be that people's lives would be affected. So in an effort to avoid any complaint or any loss of life or injury to person as a result of the absence of critical drugs and equipment, we thought it best to approve this particular sourcing.
And who are the principals of the company?
I believe that information is available at the tender board level. Cabinet only goes into this, no objection, but the National Tender Board has to do that waiver.
Questions?
It's a company that predated government coming into office, but its place of business is on the west bank of Demerara. That question has been asked.
Questions outside?
Okay, I think Mr. You have the mic, because I think Mr. Shabral wanted the first go ahead, but you have the mic.
On constitutional reform, the Constitutional Reform Committee. Mr. Hughes had submitted for an extension in December. I'm just following up on the status of that.
Well, as far as I know, Mr. Hughes submitted a report. A report was submitted by him, and Cabinet is setting aside a specific date to deal with that and a few other matters on or about mid-April.
Didn't he ask for an extension?
I'm not saying no, but I'm in possession of an actual report. So there may have been an extension to do more work, but there is a document that has been submitted, and I think that is what Cabinet will be examining.
You don't know how soon?
By mid-April, we are setting aside a date to deal with that and a few other matters.
Yes. Minister, in light of Guyana's participation in the global fight against money laundering, to what extent will government be still purchasing heavy-duty machinery from Guytrack in light of the recent charges against one of its principals, to avoid government being complicit in what can best be termed layering in that process? And could you say what is government's unified position with respect to the radio licenses that were granted by then President Barry Jagdeo?
I don't know that Cabinet has not considered on a case-by-case basis its purchases. As far as I'm aware, there has been no, Cabinet has not been presented with any document asking for its no objection with respect to Guytrack. So I'm not aware that any such purchase has been made or is intended to be made.
But should it come?
If it comes, we'll have to deal with it on its merits. It either falls or stands on its merits. It falls or stands on its merits.
But with that consideration of one of
I think you can trust Cabinet to deliberate confidentially on these matters when it comes before it. But I wouldn't prejudge and express a bias for or against anything that comes before Cabinet. It has to be assessed objectively.
And the radio licenses.
Radio licenses, it is also that matter is an ongoing matter being discussed by the press, but I did mention a few minutes ago that there are a number of matters which are up for policy discussion mid-April, and this is going to be one of them.
And sir, as I have the microphone, could you say when will wage negotiations, excuse me, begin with trade unions for increases for this year?
I believe that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State will signal their date when ready.
And is government considering the purchasing of an aircraft for use by the president and ministers in going overseas on official visits?
Not to my knowledge. But all things are possible. As I said, I can only deal with what takes place within the realms of cabinet. Certainly, I can say that when I appeared before the budget planning team at Ministry of Finance for the 2016 budget, Mr. Bagobin, who is a long-standing official at Ministry of Finance, did introduce the subject of government purchasing aircraft, the high level of travel. My ministry, natural resources, agriculture, communities, he said from a cost-benefit analysis it seemed best, and in fact he said he would investigate whether or not it made sense for us to own and maintain a fleet of aircraft, because the amount that is being spent on charters is high, but these are necessary for us to be able to access the 10 regions. So as I said, nothing is before cabinet, but nothing at the same time is being ruled out, because that suggestion did come from Mr. Tarshan Bagobin himself.
That was for domestic use.
For use.
So may I take you down the road?
Did I find favor with you, Mr.
For use.
No, but
I'm a servant of the government. If the government provides an aircraft for me to go to Aishalton, I take it. So it is not for me to find favor or disfavor with it. I've got to do my job as any other minister has to do theirs.
Sir, did Cabinet review the results of the recent local government elections? And did it arrive at some of the conclusions arrived at by the opposition that the government was losing ground in the general voting public?
Well, I'm not sure. You noticed my tie this morning is of a certain persuasion. Cabinet did have some discussions, and we're quite satisfied with the outcome of the elections, and we believe that the elections and the results confirm that our strategy as we advanced it has worked. We're not here to give support to statements made by the opposition. We concentrated our efforts on the towns, the urban centers. That strategy worked. We're not at all put off by what people call a low turnout. In fact, the turnout was quite average based on what obtained in the past and based on what obtained in other parts of Guyana. And both government and opposition obviously have varying strategies, and both put those strategies to the test, and both perhaps will claim victory. So we are quite satisfied with the outcome, and we believe that the vision of bringing urbanizing or the urbanization of Guyana is actually taking root, and we are well on our way to advancing our agenda.
Minister Trotman, on the 50th anniversary committee, we have received complaints from the business community that for donations they are not given a receipt by the committee. Should they be given a receipt for the donations made?
Well, it depends on who's asking for the donation. I remember during the 2006 elections, there was a man with a business card that said he was the general secretary for the AFC, who had made a walk down Regent Street and taken in millions. And the AFC had no such title or position. But I would expect that if an official of the government solicits and receives a contribution, that official should have either a letter of introduction, and that person should issue a receipt, and persons are encouraged to demand receipts for donations. But we have received no such complaints.
Should the names of those persons be made public beforehand so people know who they are?
Well, government is a multifaceted thing. It might actually be over 100 persons who I may very well be asked to solicit a donation for a particular project. a person from another ministry or department. So it's difficult to actually itemize, but as I said, the person should have a letter of introduction and appointment.
So why I ask, Minister, is because given what you've just said there, to what extent that is not open the door for persons to take advantage of your recent comment just seconds ago to say, okay, they will produce a letter and go around.
No, but you can produce a letter, but it has to be signed by a high state official. You can't just produce your own letter and go out there saying that you are representing the government. I would expect that the Minister of Education, both ministers, the Minister himself, Dr. Trotman, and the Minister within, and perhaps the Minister of State could issue such letters.
Nobody else.
Yes, somebody else.
Yes, good morning. Javon Vickery, NCN News. Can you say how soon? Yeah, can you say how soon we can see some of the initiatives and plans that were discussed between the judiciary and the Prime Minister as it pertains to the Georgetown prisons?
Okay, that matter in fact was brought up at Cabinet, and it is historic. In fact, where the executive and judicial branches meet, and I thought it was quite appropriate that they met at the judiciary rather than here. A number of initiatives were itemized, and from what I have seen and heard is that these are going to be implemented soon. Right now, the thrust is to reduce the backlog of cases and to have and also to bring the level of or the number of prisoners, particularly at Camp Street, down. Of course, the commission of inquiry that is ongoing will also no doubt produce very good recommendations about the overall state of our penal system, which we will, as I said before, examine carefully and implement those which we find feasible. Because, for example, the construction of a new prison now may not be financially feasible. It will have to be on a longer term basis, but no doubt we need a new prison outside of Georgetown. Complaints about conditions have to be addressed immediately. You would note that with the assistance of the US government, we have sent a large body of officers for training in how they react to emergencies and so forth. So we are starting to see some changes.
I know you said soon, but can you give a time frame?
It's very difficult to say that by a particular date the numbers in the prison will be reduced by 20% or 30%. It has to do with calling up the caseload list to see how many available judges there are. We are looking at night courts. That is between the hours of say 4 and 8 in the evenings to process cases. I don't think that the intention is really to send more people into the prison, but certainly to process those who are being detained to see whether they should go on bail and so forth. That's one initiative that we hope to see in place within another few weeks. The Ministry of Finance has been approached about special budgetary arrangement because that was not contemplated in the 2016 budget. So that will have to come via a financial paper to Parliament. Our next sitting is the 4th of May. So these are things that we can expect soon.
I think one final question, if I may. Are you concerned that prisoners they still have cell phones and they're on Facebook, and the prison's attorney would have said that in order to rid completely, they would need bigger capacity of prison officers. Is the Army per se could be one that could join in with them to take this up on trade?
Well, I think that this is obviously a phenomenon that we are seeing that is not unique to Guyana, and we're in the throes of an information revolution. Guns have been known to be smuggled into this prison and other prisons elsewhere, cell phones, drugs, food, and in some cases, some prisoners even get conjugal visits. It happens all over the world. We expect that when this inquiry is over, these matters will be addressed in terms of what ratio of officers to prisoners we need to increase or maintain. I don't personally believe that the role of and I don't believe it is government's belief either, that the role of the military should be to be deployed in the prisons. They should only be to protect our territorial integrity and to assist the law enforcement agencies if they're a threat to national security. So I don't see that being a possibility. Some people have, and persons have discussed the privatization of our prison system as is done elsewhere, where private security firms are brought in to take in perhaps the softer parts of the enforcement. So these are things that the Commission will have to consider and make recommendations on.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everyone. And happy Easter to everyone.